Dr. Yaffa, what does this say about the mystery surrounding the transatlantic slave trade?
Well, it says a lot because there's other information out there online from historians, particularly on the slave trade. Dr. David Eltis, Eltis, as in Sam. He's British, a historian, born and raised in the UK, but he is currently working at a university here in the United States. And I had to go and find information on him. He's got books out, but the key is the most important thing he says is, and you have to find other interviews of him. There are several. Uh, and he repeatedly says the Black African American population is basically native to America or indigenous autochtons in America, which everyone says, oh, you guys are delusional. You don't know where you're from. You don't know who you are. This is not your homeland. Stop trying to appropriate the Native American identity. No, no, we're not trying to appropriate anyone's identity. We want ours back. We want ours back. Years ago, I looked into the 16, 19, 20 people they brought in that they say they brought from Africa as Africans on slaves. Well, I don't remember the exact website because you guys know I'm a speedy reader and I go through a lot and I read a lot. But somewhere on a UnitedStates.gov website, they made it very clear that they only brought 20 people here on the ships in 2019 that they try to say are African and from Africa. And unless I'm mistaken, all 20 of them were women. I believe all 20 of them were women. Now, just like all the brothers off the ship that they took over to Europe uh, in the St. Mary the Goodwin's portraits were all young brothers. They were all youth. So you have to know what they're doing here. But I've repeatedly tried to tell people, and they accuse me of being crazy and don't know what I'm talking about. And oh, everybody started in Africa and everything came from Africa and everyone comes from Africa. And yet they keep only wanting to send our people to Africa. I don't see anyone telling the Europeans to go back there. I didn't see anybody telling the Native Americans to go back there who are basically European. When it's all said and done, one of the things that Eltis has said in the past is when they did the census in 1870, which is the very first census where they even counted what he called Black Native Americans, Black Native African Americans. That's the term he used. You have to understand something that he's not saying, and I don't know why he's not saying, but I'm going to give you why I think he's not saying it. He knows what his people are like. He doesn't need anybody trying to put his head on a chopping block. He doesn't need anybody going, oh, what are you, so-called nigger lover? Or he doesn't need anybody running around talking about, okay, get a rope, it's time for a hanging. He doesn't need that. So he says what he says, but it's not his job or responsibility to take the information and run with it. It is our job and responsibility to take the information and run with it. I have said for years that the basis of the slave trade for the people that they keep saying are African was the Americas. He says the slavery was basically centered out of Jamaica. And most of the slavery was what he called intra, not inter. Inter means within, INTER means within. Between. Inter means between. Intra, INTRA, means within. So within the Americas was the basis of the slave trade. And a lot of the people were deposited into Brazil. And he made it clear that whatever Africans they did bring over here, almost all of them wound up in Brazil. And a lot of them came through Jamaica, but they took people all over from America into Jamaica and into Brazil. But like I've said, they've taken some people from there to north. But comprehend this. The people that are on the reservations, I've told you before, they refuse to participate in DNA testing. The world's genome projects on these DNA, the world has said, if we ever did a map of the DNA genome for the world, for the planet, the United States Native American population is like a big blank spot. There's nothing coming from them. You know why? Because they know they're not the people. If they do the DNA, They know they're not the people. Matter of fact, there's people over there in the Middle East, which to me they're all the same people, who refuse to do DNA testing also, but they're behind a lot of the DNA testing. Just saying for the record. However, in 1870, what he does not say that is very, very important, he says in 1870, the first time they counted the Black African American population, and these were his words, not mine, there were almost no Africans at all in mainland USA, which people have to comprehend. There were no so called Africans, not only in mainland USA, but basically North America, which is the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And I do believe he included Haiti. Those people have always been here, okay, in those areas. He made that pretty clear. In 1870, he said the first time they counted the Black population was in 1870. But let me tell you what I know about that he didn't say, because that's not the proper wording, because we weren't even called that back then. The very first time they ever counted America's Indians was 1870. And they counted us by number on that census, such as, oh, there were 200 women and 150 men and, you know, 80 children, that type of thing. This is how they did it. 1880 was very similar, but they, you know, they might have got into the some other different demographic, but basically it was still a number count. 1890 was the very first time, and I've told the public this before, 1890 was the very first census that they ever counted America's Indians by name, by name. And years ago, when I was trying to get that information, I was told everywhere I looked, oh, the 1890 census was destroyed in a fire. There are no records of the 1890 census because it was destroyed in a fire. No one has the 1890 records because it was destroyed in a fire. And I'm like, how does that even make any sense? But you have to remember also, a lot of areas, the county clerk recorder's office where they kept the records were burned in a fire. Also, a lot of court buildings where they kept the records were burned in a fire. Why is that? Because they were trying to disconnect our people who are now erroneously misidentified as Blacks from Africa on ships of slave African Americans, which we are not. We were found here, and the Americans Indians were enslaved and put on auction blocks and slave blocks and shipped off around the world and around the country, the continent. But those individuals were not only always here, they were the holders of the land and the owners of the land. So they had to burn the records to disappear and disconnect us from the land. The records that showed us by name, they had to burn that to disconnect us from the land. Now, I was on the phone with a young brother the other day. He's a master historian, little chief. He was telling me as we were talking, he's like, I didn't know about that. I hadn't heard anything about that. And see, I like the kind of people, if I tell you something, don't just listen to me talk. Go look and see while I'm talking to you if anything I'm saying is true, because it may not be there tomorrow. So he went and looked. He's like, oh my God, it does say. But what he brought to my attention was not what I was told over a decade ago when I was looking for this information. He said, Yaffa, it says that the 1890 census record was mostly destroyed in 1890. I'm like, really? Say what now? Repeat that again? He's like, yeah, apparently they still have the records for like Alabama and Washington, D.C. So I guess there are some places, because I'm like, I don't see how that was possible that the entire record is destroyed, because every region would have their own variations of the copies. But I do comprehend why they would do it, because that is the very first year that they counted all of us by name. And that is when they destroyed the records so that we would not be able to identify that we're American Indian or Indian, not African Americans. We are not Africans in America. We're Americans in America. This is our ancestral homeland. I don't care what everybody else keeps saying. You got to find Johnny Aborigine. You got to find Sosaline Ha. You got to find Kurame Yo. Those brothers will bring you the proof and the evidence and give you the receipts, and they will show you the books and the author and the title and read it to you so that you can go buy it yourself if you're interested. However, we have always been here. This is our ancestral homeland, and it's going to come out. And all of you that are running around here won't let go of Africa, because not everyone came from Africa. And if everyone did, well, this whole when y'all, why don't y'all go back to Africa? Well, after you go, maybe we'll talk and we'll think about it. You after you first, you first. If we all began there, stop trying to round up the Aborigines of America because you want to make America white, which is in alignment with Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin made it very, very clear. The whole planet is dark. Germany is swarthy. America is tawny. The Swedes are dark. Everybody's dark. He said there are no whites except for the Anglo-Saxon. The whole world is dark. We are not bringing any more darkies to America. America's dark already. They weren't trying to bring a bunch of slaves into mainland USA because he said America, but America's a continent. He was talking about basically mainland USA. They didn't bring hardly anyone into mainland USA on any ships as slaves from a continent overseas. But if you keep talking that narrative, you can find yourself getting deported to a place that you are not tied to, you are not from. And even if you have one or two African ancestors, that does not erase all of your indigenous, Aboriginal, American ancestry. Wake up. Do better. We are not FBAs. Black originally meant bleached up, pale, and white in color. Now it means the color of a car tire. We're not fundamentally black. We're no kind of black. White folks are black because they're bleached up, pale, and white in color. That's all I want to say on that because, we don't want to go over and over because I can go on and on and on. But we're trying to keep this short. We just wanted to bring it to you because when I say it, it doesn't matter coming from me. I'm just a woman. And I'm just a melanin rich woman at that. When it comes to our people, nothing is true unless it comes from a white man. Even a white woman can't tell you. A white man has to say it in order for you to believe that it's true. And Dr. David Eltis is a master historian, especially on everything slavery. And he said they're just now getting the records out about the intra American slave trade